Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is Ask the Expert. My name is Jen. I'll be your moderator for this 1 hour long session. At National Aphasia Association, we are celebrating 35 years of support, providing access to research, education, rehabilitation, therapeutic, and advocacy services to individuals with aphasia and to their care partners. Today, we're very lucky to be joined by Maura English Silverman, founder of Triangle Aphasia Project, a founding member of Aphasia Access, recipient of the inaugural Innovator Award, Triangle Business Journal's Healthcare Hero, and ASA's Raise Award. Today, Maura will be talking with us about communication support teams. So she'll be talking a little bit, and then we'll open up the floor to those in our live audience for questions. So again, if you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A chat. So now I'm going to hand it off to Maura. But again, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate such a sweet introduction. I also wanted to take a moment and say thank you to the Aphasia Association. I have been involved with the NAA since I started in my career, and one of the main reasons that I quit my really good paying job and started a nonprofit organization was because of a statistic that the National Aphasia Association put out, that 92% of people with aphasia became socially isolated or considered themselves socially isolated. I was not all about that, and I was out to change it. So thank you guys so much. I think it's really ironic that you all have invited me to be Ask the Expert, because I'm not the expert, you all are the experts. Speech pathologists learn most from people who are living the journey of aphasia. And as you'll see, I have lots of experience on the sides that I never thought I would see with aphasia. So thank you so much, and thank you for coming today. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about something that I'm pretty passionate about. So let me just start my PowerPoint from the beginning. Okay. So communication support teams is something that I feel really excited about, and is kind of a newer idea in the field. And I think it's funny and so appreciative that I was awarded this an innovative award, and that people have called communication support teams innovative. But really, if you remember a quote about invention, is that necessity is the mother of invention. And the reason that I started or thought of the idea of communication support teams is really from frustration in the way things were being done, and people saying, well, it's always been that way. And I feel like if we can really empower people to take this journey of aphasia and address it in the way that they need for their life, could be a really big game changer. So I'm just going to quickly say that I have no financial or non-financial disclosures for this presentation. I am an employee, the founder and now the director of clinical services for the Triangle Aphasia Project Unlimited. We are a nonprofit organization in the North Carolina state, in the area of the Triangle mainly. And we serve people with aphasia, their families, and the community. Our whole goal is that life participation has inherent barriers that we are going to change by helping people maximize their communicative potential and get rid of some of those barriers. Aphasia is my passion. These people that I get to serve, the families that I work with, people with aphasia from stroke or primary progressive aphasia, brain tumors, infection, these people are my why. It changed a little bit in 2009 when I added a why, which was my dear sweet mom, who suffered a massive left hemisphere stroke with aphasia, apraxia of speech, right hemiparesis, and boy, I learned what it was like on the other side. She was my greatest teacher, and I'm hoping that her lessons will be something that comes through in this talk with you today. When I was asked to talk on this again, I was so incredibly honored, but I didn't know where to start. There's so many things I would love to talk about: engagement, assessment, things, neuroplasticity, which I'm kind of a neuroplasticity nerd. But groups, we do a lot of groups at TAP, and I would love to talk about those. But I really thought I should narrow it down. And I stepped back and said, you know what? I'm going to tell people about the process of how I came up with communication support teams. I'm going to tell you what communication support teams are, challenge you and empower you to start your own communication support team if that's something you're interested in. And also understand that your journey is yours. So I stepped back and said, okay, what do I know about aphasia? Well, first of all, I know that it does affect language, but it also affects confidence. And if some people, I've told that confidence is worse than their language impairment, scared to kind of go out, not feeling as confident as they were before. That aphasia affects everyone. It affects people with aphasia, their family members, their children, their grandchildren, their aunt and uncle, their cousins, their family, their friends. Oftentimes I'll say to people I'm training, go to your phone and look at your contacts. If you had a stroke tomorrow and you had aphasia, which people on those contacts would you not want to be able to communicate with you anymore? Everybody who is in your world deserves to know how to communicate with you. And that's why friendships are threatened. There's amazing work going on in the world right now in the aphasia community about friendships and how they're threatened, not only past old friendships, but how to develop new friendships when you have a language or communication impairment. A person with aphasia's community shrinks, their connections shrink, those contacts on your phone shrink, and it's not okay. And it's, again, what I told you why I got involved in the NAA to begin with, is that social isolation is a risk we can't continue to allow. It's a common consequence of aphasia, but it will cause more problems by having somebody isolated. And then there is much work in the area of low mood and depression, with staggering statistics about the incidence of depression. Up to 70% of people with aphasia show low mood, and not only them, but their care partners, and they are more likely to have depression and low mood than their stroke counterparts who don't have aphasia. Okay, so these are the things that were going through my mind, but there were some other things. One is, I've already admitted that I am a neuroplasticity nerd. I have read and taught on so many areas of the brain changing, because when I went into the field many, many moons ago, you were told that you were going to make the most improvement in 6 months, all of your improvement in a year. And we know that's just not true. As a matter of fact, if you have enough repetition, if you have enough intensity, if you have things that are relevant and important to a person, then the opportunity for neural connections to occur in your brain and be regenerating to have new pathways is absolutely possible and likely if you do the right things. So what do? You do more speech therapy, right? Well, we all know, unfortunately, that speech therapy and communicative opportunities, while being an incredible way of accessing this neuroplasticity, is not enough. If you want something intensive, you have to have up to 9 hours a week of stimulation in reading and writing and listening and speaking. But those aren't available for a lot of people, whether it's your insurance, whether it's distance, whether it's wait lists with speech therapy. And the timelines have all been compressed. So again, another "how old is Maura" comment is that when I went into the field many, many moons ago, that when somebody had a stroke, they were in the hospital for a good week or 2 weeks before they even thought about transferring the person into inpatient rehab or subacute therapy. Then inpatient rehab, hold your breath, could be up to a year, sometimes more. Like we celebrated stroke anniversaries and happy birthdays, year in inpatient rehab. Now we know if you get a month, maybe 2 months, you're super lucky. Home health and outpatient therapy. And then what? Well, then there wasn't a lot. Thankfully, in the last couple decades, there has been aphasia centers and programs that allow people to continue that kind of programming. But if the continuum of care was like this before, it's like this now. So if the intensity matters, but you're getting discharged earlier, how are you supposed to get the changes that you need? So that was going through my mind. The other thing went through my mind is on December 17th, 2009, when I got the call from the state police that my mom had suffered a stroke while driving. This is what everybody saw. They only saw what the negatives were. They only saw all of the challenges she had. And that perception, that perspective was going to impact what they were going to offer her. How do I let people know this is that woman in that bed? This was just 2 weeks later. So it's amazing what a little makeup and hairspray will do. But it's not all of the things that are wrong with somebody. You are not the patient, you are a person. And the person, all of these things, a born caregiver, a volunteer, someone who loves to read and knit and shop and plan parties, that is your goal for getting back to life. Those are the things that we got to do. So now that's going in my head. So now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, who is this person? Who are they connected to? Who do I need to train? Well, I knew this patient and I knew these are a heck of a lot of people, and that's just her family. So friends, family, all the people, the nurses, aides, anybody that was working with her. And finally, I knew one other thing, and this is so important. People want to help. People will contact you in the beginning of an incident, a stroke, cancer, whatever is going on with you, and they say, let me know if you need anything. Well, after my mom had her stroke, believe me, I wanted to call some of those people and say, well, actually, my bathroom is kind of dirty, so if you could just come over and clean that. Honestly, people want to do something. They just don't know how to help. So that was going through my mind. So now I'm looking in my mind, of course, this is why I don't sleep at night, because I'm thinking, okay, so we have a communication problem that affects your confidence. And we have a communication problem that could cause depression and low mood if I don't get this person active. Well, there's speech therapy, but there's not enough speech therapy. There's groups, but that's still not enough intensive therapy for the long haul. We know it's going to be intense, and we know it's going to take a lot more than 2 45-minute sessions a week. Oh, and I know people want to help. What do all those thoughts mean? Well, this was my middle of the night thought, is I can't go with the status quo. I got to think outside the box. I got to come up with something that doesn't exist. And that is a communication support team. The idea of a communication support team is not really 100% new, because it comes from a place of care teams, meal trains, things that happen when somebody has a catastrophic change in their family. And we bring them Boston Market, and we might collect money and send in somebody to clean their house and that kind of stuff. Not completely new. However, how can we weave it into what we know about aphasia? Well, here it is. A communication support team is a program that I developed that's based on the idea of a care team model. A group of people brought together for a common interest, for a common purpose. It's an ability to recruit people to support and build the person's engagement. One of the things I put in a little parentheses here for me to remind you is that all of our words in rehab start with re. You know what re means? It means to do it again, right? Repeat it, re-engage, reintegrate, rehab. What if we looked at it different and thought about, let's never disengage somebody. Let's not disintegrate somebody. Let's keep people involved. And we do that by training the people that are in those circles that they want to return to. So if we get some volunteers, we use them as, it's been called communicative partners, communicative buddies, tutors, supports, you can call them whatever you want. They're wonderful angels of help. And we provide more opportunities for communication and practice of speech and language skills, while at the same time addressing any barriers that exist in their world for them to participate in life fully. So it's not have speech therapy, go out to the waiting room, give some homework, go home, do your homework 5 minutes before your next session, come back to speech therapy. That's not going to change the brain. We have to find opportunities. And then we have to make that training available along their lifespan. So as their goals change and erupt with progress, we're there to provide new challenges, because therapy doesn't end when a speech therapist tells you you're done. And hopefully they do that very nicely. So how do I organize one of these communication support teams? Well, first of all, you have to decide on how formal you even want a communication support team. I had the great honor and pleasure of working with Dr. John Lyons up in Wisconsin many moons ago. And when I did, he taught me about his communicative partner, communication buddy program. And that was just one other person who learned about the person with aphasia and did things in their life with that person. So it can be as simple as that, one buddy, or maybe you have 5 volunteers that come for 1 hour a week. That's 5 additional hours a week. Are you adding this up in your head about neuroplasticity? You have to decide on the duration of the program. Is this going to be like a trial? We're going to do this just for the summer. We're going to do this, at a certain time, or are we going to keep it going? What kind of activities? This is not drill. You don't really just want somebody to work on worksheets. You want them to do real life activities. So you have to decide on what type of activities, find out about them and write them down and have people choose them. And we'll talk about that in a second. What kind of training are you going to have? And then most of all, what type of communication will you have between the team so that they can keep moving forward and connect together? All right, I need some ideas. How do I find these team members? Well, think Avon. Think about when you throw a party and you decide who you're inviting to a party, or you go to a memorial service for somebody who's passed and you say, oh, these are Bob's friends from work. Oh, these are Bob's friends from his basketball league. These are Bob's friends from school. This is his neighborhood. You find all those people by looking in different locations. You may consider students. Look at volunteers that contact aphasia centers. Look at a neighborhood listserv. People want to help. You can put an ad in a church bulletin. I've done this many times for families where I put a little ad in that says, looking for volunteers to help with my husband's language. He has had a stroke and he would love to connect with you. You might use social media. Be careful, but you might use social media and ask some of your own friends. But start as soon as you can. The best communication support team I ever saw do this was they put a notebook in the patient's room when they were first in the hospital. And on top it said, we really appreciate you visiting Mary. That's pre-COVID when you could visit people. But it said, thank you for visiting Mary, whatever her name was. And it says, and if you will write your name and your email address, we don't need your help now because therapy is kind of intense, but we may need your help later. That's such a great way to capture those names and come back to them later. So what kind of activities should you suggest to the people? Well, it can be structured language activities. So you can do crossword puzzles, you can do worksheets if you have those. If the speech therapist he's seeing has given some homework, you could have the volunteer work on that homework. I don't use that word, so it's very hard for me to spit that one out. Computer programs, tablet programs like Tactus Therapy, Constant Therapy, there's a lot of great apps out there, but oftentimes people with aphasia can't do them themselves. So that's a perfect way of having one of your volunteers or your buddies help you with that. You can have them partner up for groups. We all know that much of our life went virtual over the last 2.5 years. And our programs at TAP also did. So when we would hold groups on reading, writing, book clubs, music groups, those kind of things, oftentimes a person was getting lost because they didn't have those keywords or those supports. So the spouse needed to sit alongside the person. That is not allowing that spouse to get out that hour of respite, and it is not letting the person become more independent. So a partner would be great there. Volunteer tasks. Hook up with somebody that already does a volunteer activity and have the person go along with them. Arts, fitness, basically it's what the person loves and finds interesting is what you pair them up to do. So how do you do training? This is a very unique and individual kind of situation. Most times, if you go to your speech therapist and you say, hey, I'm putting together a team, will you train them how to communicate with Joe? Absolutely, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. If you can't do that, contact an aphasia center in your area, and they will certainly help with that kind of training. It should be specific to the person, not just that general training that we do. It should also involve different partner groups. For example, let's say Joe belonged to a Bible study before his stroke. He also had a group that he went in the morning to have coffee with at Bojangles. Well, both of those people need to be trained, but their training might be a little different. And it might only take 15 minutes to explain to Joe's Bojangles group what they might need to do to help. And the training needs to constantly be adapting to the progress and needs of the person. So as a person progresses, so should the training. And how are we going to do that? I have some ideas there too. Really emphasize ownership. In the beginning of a communication support team, the speech therapist or the lead person, maybe the spouse or a volunteer that says, I'll kind of lead it up, will be the main person. But what you see is the model of the team just develops and the team all takes responsibility. And the focus really should be on ownership by the person with aphasia because it's their journey and it's their goals. One of the things I came up with after failing, another innovation basis, is many times I was trying to find some way to communicate with the rest of the team. I've tried email. I used to do Yahoo groups or Google groups. I've tried a private Facebook group, which was actually pretty successful because you have to invite people in and they can only be in that group. Caring Bridge was helpful. Care Pages was one that I used with my mom. But the biggest one is team sites. So there's a lot of these sites that I know you think Shutterfly might be for pictures or albums, but they have a team site. They call them share sites, and you can personalize it. So we would take a site on Shutterfly on the share site, and we would make it our own. We would put a calendar and a team and resources. And what was so cool about this, and what is so cool about this, is that every team member, because you're the only ones that log in onto that person's team, can access tasks that you might put up or video examples of things. It can put up notes and, hey, Joe's having a rough day today. I noticed when we read an article about this, he got kind of sad, and then everybody gets that information. So that's a good way of communicating, but there's lots of other ways. I thought that I would kind of wrap this part up with an example of a real communication support team. Now, luckily I have many. I don't have as many as I would like to have because not a lot of people know about it, and COVID didn't help that situation. But prior to the pandemic, I wanted to share this incredible story of an 18-year-old named Austin who came to us after 3 months in rehab outside of the state. He was just about to leave for college, graduated from high school, when he suffered a large left MCA CVA, and his family heard about TAP. And when he came back from rehab, before he even started in outpatient rehab, he started with a communication support team. And we said at that time, Austin, what do you want to do? And through supported conversation and learning to speak aphasia, we found out he had some lofty goals. And many therapists would say, oh, that's unrealistic. We don't say that because it's not our goal, it's your goal. So he wanted to participate in soccer again. He wanted to be involved in his church. He wanted to maintain his friendships. He wanted to go to college. He wanted to live independently and have a job. These were things that were critically important to him. So we recruited for his team. This is at the same time as he was getting standard speech therapy along the normal continuum of care. We had 15 people signed up. It narrowed down to 6 people that had been with him for 8 years, because Austin is now 27. We started with an initial training, then we did it quarterly to kind of check in and see what he was doing, answer questions of the individual tutors, and we always had celebrations. Every year we went out to dinner at the time. We had a celebration for things because we wanted that motivation and that inspiration to keep going. We had a Shutterfly team site that initially I monitored, then it kind of went over to his mom, and then everybody participated in it. We looked at his interests and said, how can we match up his interests with some of his team members' interests? In the beginning, we worked on, oh, I love soccer and I volunteer for this program with kids with developmental disabilities. Oh, let's put Austin involved in that. And we paired them up. He was volunteering at a food pantry and library with one of his other tutors. He went to the gym with another tutor. He had reading and discussion with other tutors. He helped speech therapy practice. And then he returned to college. His mother is a wonderful statistician. So she put together this, and I want to explain it, and I want you really to think about this, is that the red pieces here, red lines, indicate those professional one-on-one speech therapy. And again, I love my fields. I love my speech therapists out there, but we know we can't do it all. This is from 2015 or 14 to 2021. And of course, you notice that's going down. For some people, that will go away completely when they no longer qualify for speech therapy. But meanwhile, the blue represents the communication support teams and TAP groups that Austin participated in. So the total amount of kind of speech, communication, directed programming is represented in the green. Every year we modified the goals. Every year we kept making changes to the point where he was working on all of his goals. Let's think about the totals here. If I added up all those graphs, that would be 3,250 hours of functional, directed, supported communication programming. Speech therapy? No. There was 1,384 hours of therapy, which still is a lot of speech therapy. But it averaged 2.5 hours of communication support team to every 1 hour of professional speech therapy, which if you stretch it out and say the person got 3 times a week speech therapy, like in the old days, it would have accomplished over 12 years of additional programming by using a communication support team. That blows my mind. We thought it was cool, but we asked the people that have had communication support teams. So these are some quotes from people who have been involved in communication support teams. Those of us who volunteer with Austin know him well and are invested in his recovery. Another family said this was a cost-effective solution for us. We couldn't afford an intensive program and we didn't want to leave home to go to one. Another person said, I felt like I could just be Tom's wife again, not his therapist. And the other one is a family member that said, this communication support team has served so many functions for our family. So I thought it was cool, but I wanted to share what some of the conclusions are, is that you can think outside of the box and come up with programming that offers something unique. You don't have to do what's told to you. That it's accessible to do a communication support team. That it's from a financial perspective and a geographic standpoint, it allows people to participate in a more intensive program. It's almost like having an intensive therapy program in your backyard. And then it's open to any level of formality. You don't have to develop a huge support group. You could do instead a one-on-one partnership. So throughout this, I learned some lessons, and I'm going to end with those lessons. Number one is progress happens in real life from real struggles and real communicative opportunities. Yes, speech therapy is wonderful, but it's real life that makes the difference. That if you connect with others with aphasia, it is so powerful to the person with aphasia and their families. Please find aphasia programs in your area, in your state, and get connected to them. Where there's something not available, create it. It is the best thing when we just use our own innovation. Allow people to help. It is as frustrating to be on the other side of someone who doesn't allow you to do something. And as Nike says, just do it. Don't wait around. You know, those people that were amazingly helpful when my mom had her stroke were great. And when they would ask, what do you need? I just didn't know what I needed. But one person came over, wrapped all my Christmas gifts, because remember it was right before Christmas, and left them in bags outside of my house. Just do it. It's amazing. Never, ever, 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 ever give up and let people take away your hope, because they're your goals and not those of your therapist. You think all of this is lofty in terms of goals. You think that maybe your goal is unrealistic. Well, here's a young man who for 8 years worked on his language and his speech, and he said nothing after his stroke and could not write or read. And I'd like to introduce you to the newest graduate from Liberty University, Austin. He just graduated in May with his associate's degree and is working and continuing to pursue his hobbies and his volunteer work. That's my talk on communication support teams. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you thinking, and I hope it empowered you. And I'm here if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas.
Thank you so much, Maura. That was such an inspiring message. I really hope you can pass on a message to Austin for us. Congratulations.
Thank you, I will, I'm sure.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Let's get started with some of our live questions.
Let me just make one note about Austin. He took that neuroplasticity thing so to heart that he read every single one of his textbooks out loud, cover to cover.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of our live questions asks if there are support groups for primary progressive aphasia in Connecticut, but I'm actually wondering also if you think communication support teams would be beneficial for people who have primary progressive aphasia.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to answer it in two parts. One is support. Support for the caregiver, the care partner, the family who's dealing with primary progressive aphasia can be offered through the Association for Frontotemporal Dementia, and the National Aphasia Association has a great PPA support program, not just for the family members, but for the clients themselves. So support, that's that. Communication support teams for PPA is an excellent way. The only difference is the training needs to reflect that there's going to be changes that are not going to be such as a stroke where they're going to continue to improve. And so if the person that helps train for a communication support team is, again, these group of people might start out with language stimulation, going volunteering with the person, reading with the person, but then it might alter to be like a little respite for the spouse who needs to get out, or an assistance in walking with the person, or doing something social with the person. I think it's even more important, a communication support team with people with primary progressive aphasia, because their support needs are so much more as they progress.
Thank you. Our next live question asks, or says, I'm my own caregiver with no local family. What are some ways that I can adapt your methods?
Yes, it's a great question. And you know what's really interesting is that we live here in North Carolina. A lot of people move their parent here, whatever, when something happens. And it's what I did when my mom had her stroke. I had to move her down here and tore her away from a really close-knit group and all her social connections and activities. So she didn't know anybody. And so, yeah, it is hard when you're your own caregiver. What I would say is contact your local university that has a speech pathology program. Ask about volunteers or students that might be able to help. If you're involved in any kind of groups, like a church group, a women's group, a men's group, whatever, check out like your neighborhood. It also depends if you live in a community. So if you live in like an assisted living or retirement community, often that's a really great way to engage the person as well.
We got another question in our chat.
Sure.
And actually, this is one question that we also received that was pre-submitted.
Yes.
So I guess one thing is, I might be misunderstanding this question. It says, is there a difference between CCC SLP and speech therapy? I think that's what the question's asking. If I'm
okay, yeah,
please correct me.
Yeah, so as speech language pathologist, which is the same as a speech therapist, a speech pathologist is, or as my son used to call it when he was little, a peach papologist. Couldn't say his S's. That's not good for a speech therapist mother. That is, now you have to have a minimum of a master's degree and a certification. So you're licensed in one state, so that's a licensure, and then there's certification. Certification is through our national organization called ASHA, American Speech Hearing Language Association. And that sees certificate of clinical competence, shows that the person has that certification. And so really you can't be a licensed speech pathologist and treat in the United States without your C's. So those are two kind of things we have to have as a license. That's what you should look for, is a speech pathologist as a license and their C's. I don't think really you have many people that don't. Now there is something called a speech assistant. They have to be under the supervision, kind of like a PA would be, under the supervision of a speech pathologist. But what I would also say is that what I'm suggesting here is that there are people that can be trained by speech pathologists, can be trained by even your family members to communicate better with somebody. Speech therapy is definitely a skilled service, and I'm not underestimating that. But we're not brain surgeons. You know, we can teach you the tools you need to communicate with the people, and you can work on that with them as well. It's a really great question, but yeah, it's more of our national certification.
The second part of this question asks, I've outgrown in personal speech therapy, and this is a question that we get quite often. Another question that we received, if I can just share my screen for 1 second.
Of course.
My neurologist and or speech therapist have said that I don't need more therapy, but I still want to continue. Are there other professionals that can help me with my speech?
Okay, I want you to do something for me while you're on that screen. I want you to look at the words that say, they have said, I don't need more therapy. It's not up to them about what you need. And let's change the word therapy to stimulation or support or engagement. Maybe they say, you know, structured speech therapy, one-on-one speech therapy might not be something that's skilled anymore. And unfortunately, with insurance and Medicare, some of these definitions of skilled means that you are making this level of improvement on a constant basis that allows for therapy. You can close the screen now if you want to. I'm sorry. I wanted to point that out. You're saying I want to continue. The life participation approach to aphasia says a person can have speech support, communication engagement for as long as they choose to. That might not mean paid speech therapy. It might mean let's get creative and find ways to engage. And I'll tell you what's really important is, as much as I love our field, and I think structured speech therapy is really, really important, don't underestimate what real life and real engagement will do for you. It's like somebody saying, I go to a physical therapist to work on my muscles and my walking. But then if you go home and sit and watch TV until your next PT appointment, you're not making improvement. So look at it like, what can I do to engage in real life that is going to stimulate these things? So go get yourself a job as a greeter at Walmart, or, go do, like, get involved in a club at your church or in your neighborhood, and challenge yourself. And if you need help, say, I want to work on this, but I need some help to do it, then see if you can get a speech therapist to just help you with that, like get you over the hump. I hope that answered that.
Ms. Shepherdine, if that has not answered your question, please let us know in the chat.
Yeah, please.
Okay, let's go on to some of our pre-submitted questions. And again, just as a reminder, you can always ask questions in the Q&A chat or our regular chat box. Okay. My next question, should I wait until I discharge from speech therapy to start a team?
No. No, for many reasons. No, because the speech therapist can be integral to the process. So if you get the speech therapist that you're working with involved and say, I'm going to start one of these little teams, here I have some volunteers, can I invite them in for speech therapy session? And can you show them what some of the things that you can do with me? I mean, that is a great opportunity to have the speech therapist actually demonstrate the tasks that you might be working on. So I'm a fan of, now I say the earlier the better, but in the very early stages of rehab, you may be very busy, you might be really tired, and rest and is important for the brain too. So you have to do it based on your tolerance and your endurance. My recommendation is to set up a calendar and say, okay, I'm going to shoot for this many hours a week, and track it and videotape yourself and all of that. But if you look at your calendar for the week and say, okay, I got speech on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I need some stimulation of language. I need some reading on, I always say 15 minutes of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So let's say I'm going to do a little reading here. I'm going to join a book club on Thursdays. Okay, so that gives me Monday through Friday. I'm going to take Sunday because even God needed a rest day. I'm going to do something on Saturday. That's social. So plug in real communicative opportunities and then try to build up. And my little shot goal is 9 hours a week, because to be considered an intensive program, you need 9 hours. And that's how I came up with that number.
Let me share my screen again.
Sure.
Another question that we get in different iterations is, my friend has aphasia. They've expressed that they're afraid of putting a burden on others. I want them to know that I'm here. How would you navigate this situation?
Yeah, I love that question. It's such a testament to your caring, nurturing, loving heart. And I will tell you that one of the things that when my mom had her stroke and I was saying, oh, so-and-so said if they could help me or whatever, but I got this. And I don't want people, I don't want to be a burden and all this stuff. And my husband said to me, Maura, how do you feel when you help somebody? And I was like, oh my God, my heart, like I love to help people. It's fills my cup. And he said, then why wouldn't you want to do that for somebody else? And I think it's a really important kind of perspective to realize that people want to help, and you can't change their mind. But there is a couple things I've done to friends who have said, I got this, I don't want to be a burden, is instead of saying, do you need anything? I say, what do you need today? And I ask them a very specific question. I think going back to the just do it and say, and even have a conversation is, you are not only not a burden, but you fill my cup. You allow me to have purpose. And so saying something like, hey, I saw this really cool article in the paper. I was wondering if you might let me come over and read it with Jim and see what he thinks about this. I'd love to have a conversation with him. And if you want, you can go and do something while I'm doing that. And maybe that'll graduate a little bit. So kind of, take it in little bites.
Great, thank you. Fred just asked, are there things that I could do from home? Before we answer this question, I just also want to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. And so if there were some things that you missed during the presentation, or if there's an answer you want to go back to, you can always find that on the National Aphasia Association's YouTube page. We also have some great resources. We have some great resources on the National Aphasia Association's webpage, which is aphasia.org. And also, Maura, I agree with this comment that just they said they found you on Maura and they on Instagram, and they have a little like face that goes like this, which is very, I assume that means that they're excited.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you. Jen, did you have a question for me?
Oh, sorry. So the question was, are there things that I could do from home? But I think you've already covered quite a bit of that. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, what I would say is that people want a very structured kind of like a cookbook, that like if I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, this will happen. And what I like to think about it is look at our rehab partners, look at PT and OT. When an occupational therapist, you have a quick little story that I think will be relevant to y'all, is that my mom was in rehab and I went downstairs and they were, she was doing her cone stacking and that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, what is that? How does that relate to like what she's going to be doing in real life? So if I look at it from a rehab perspective, but look at an OT, she was taking tiny little screws and nails and putting them in cups. And when I went downstairs and saw her, she was sleeping. And I mean, like drooling, not paying attention, like not with it. And they said, Maura, your mom is not paying attention. We're going to send her back upstairs. She's being non-compliant. And I was like, oh my God, I know what that means from a rehab perspective. They're going to discharge her. Her length of stay is going to go like this because she's not participating. Oh my God. My mind started to go. So I grabbed a wet cloth and I wiped her face and I said, come on, Mom. And I paid her back for every time she woke me up before noon when I was a teenager. And I said to them, you know what? My mom just never would have touched a nail or a screw in her entire life. This isn't something she would have done. It doesn't have a lot of meaning for her. My dad was a serviceman, so I think he took care of those kind of things. She was a nurse, but I wouldn't give her a syringe right now. What I would say is she is Catholic and she loves saying the rosary. Like she'd say it, every day, twice if you had a headache. So we gave her the rosary. I opened that little little purse and I gave her the rosary. And I swear to you, it was like watching neuroplasticity happening, the smoke coming out of her head, because she was trying to move those beads. And she actually started praying because that's speech and automatic. And people were standing and looking at her like, oh my God. I said, that's the activities you want to do at home. Things you love, things you're passionate about, just modify them so somebody can do them at home to help you get better.
Super, super inspiring. Thank you for sharing that lovely story.
You're welcome. Well, okay. let me tell you that what I did next, because this is how you take it then to the next level, is that when my mom got discharged from rehab, she went down from 5 hours of therapy a day, or 3 hours a day for 5 days a week, to 2 days a week, 45-minute sessions. And I knew that wasn't enough, but I wasn't going to sit there and be her therapist. So I looked around and I found out the church that was near our house had a rosary making club. Who knew? And they made rosaries for the missionaries and the confirmation kids. And so I called and said, could she be a part of it? And I went and sat with her the first session. I told them all about aphasia. There's your training part. Told them all about aphasia. And I said, she really needs to work this arm, so she might get a little discoordinated. She sat there and did beads on these rosary and talked to all of the people around her for 2 hours every Tuesday. Can you say free therapy? Better therapy than we could do at home. So
incredible. Okay, so my next question is, who can do training for a communication support team?
did you say who?
Yes.
Who can you
Oh,
say
sorry.
that question?
I'm going to put it up on the screen as well.
Sure.
I think that also helps some people in our audience. Who can do training for a communication support team?
Yeah. So I think obviously a person who has some training in aphasia, so a speech therapist, which is, it kind of goes to the other question about the sooner you get started, the more you can access the speech therapist that knows you the best. But if you're already out, like I've started communication support teams on people who have been out of therapy for 5 years or 10 years. So, and then I would either go to, contact an aphasia center, see if somebody from there can do the training. It really should be somebody who has a skill set in speech therapy. But if worse comes to worse, not that this is worse, but contact people who already communicate with them and say, tell me about their strengths. Can I watch an interaction? Can I help? And so sometimes the family is the best person there. But yeah, I would say a university or a hospital or a rehab center or a aphasia center would be obviously best.
Our next question is, who leads the team?
Yeah. Again, very individualized. Sometimes it is the speech therapist who leads it in the beginning. And when you say leads, it really just means like pushes the button, gets them started out the door. It's the rest of the work that starts to take ownership. And the more that the lead person, whether that be the speech therapist or when I start a communication support team, I'll say, who would be a good leader for this? Who might be able to help me? And I have pair them up and then I wean away and let them take it from there. And once I find that person, I find that the emphasis should be on returning that power to the person with aphasia because they're the ones who deserve it. They need the power.
We are just about out of time. Are there any?
It went so fast.
I know, it went really fast. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any last thoughts?
I would emphasize that you are the expert, that this is your team, your goal. There is no such thing as unrealistic goal. It is only what you believe that you want to give to this world, and every task can be modified and every goal can be adjusted. So don't look at it like you're shooting too high. Just ask for the steps to help you get there. And if you need anything, please email me. I'm happy to answer any questions or help.
Actually, did you want to talk a little bit about the Triangle Aphasia Project and
Sure.
maybe where you're located and how people in our audience might be able to find you guys?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the Triangle Aphasia Project is, like I said, a nonprofit organization. We have 3 service divisions. We work with people with aphasia, their families, and the community. Everybody thinks of us as like groups. That is one aspect of our programming, but we have programs for training. One of the things that I noticed in a lot of the questions and a lot of the things I see on listservs and Facebook groups are people need to know how to communicate with their loved one who has aphasia. We have a program called Learning to Speak Aphasia, which we offer for free every month. You do need an RSVP because it's a small group. I do offer those kind of trainings for groups that want to do it too. So I've trained home care providers and assisted living staff and Bible studies and all kinds of things. And our community-based stuff is to support the work of great organizations like the NAA, like Aphasia Access, in our goals to get everybody to know what aphasia is and to really understand that aphasia is not a loss of intellect and it is not a loss of memory. It's a disorder of access. It's getting to the information that's the tough part. And you are still there, and we're the only ones that can get out there and tell people that. So we all need to be advocates. Instead of telling people I have a stroke and I have trouble talking, say the word aphasia, because it's important. So.
Was on mute. Thank you so much for that. For anyone in our audience who would like to find out more information about the Triangle Aphasia Project, please visit www.aphasiaproject.org. This is the website. Oh, and there's Maura. There you are.
I must have a thing for red. I don't know what it is. There's another red outfit.
Is this also Austin in this picture?
That is Austin. And you know what? We have a race that's coming up in a week and a half called Strides for Speech. And it is one of our pillar fundraisers. So feel free to go and support our fundraiser there on Facebook, or come and register. You can register virtually too. But Austin, with right hemipresis, beat me in a 5K. And when I saw him like just barrel by me, I was like, oh my God, I need to work on my running. But he's just tackled every goal. It's great. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Also, to our audience members, if you'd like to find out about any of our future events or future Ask the Experts, please visit us at aphasia.org/online-events. We're taking a little bit of a break, so we're skipping our November Ask the Expert, but we'll be back in December. Our expert is going to be a good one, so please stay tuned for that. Also, if you have any questions, I'm actually going to have you email Catherine at aphasia.org. So usually I have you guys email me, Jen at aphasia.org, but moving forward, please email Catherine at aphasia.org. Maura, do you have a minute to stay with us for just a little bit longer?
Of course.
Okay, so I'm actually going to stop the recording because I have a question that's a little bit off topic.